Hello world, welcome to my live. I am going to be doing a little singing, playing the piano, and reading a Bible story to you and talking about that. So last week, when I was doing the one I was doing last week, my eye happened to just glance and see a little Bible verse that was below the ones I was reading and the ones I was choosing for last week. And it just caught my eye, and I saw it and said, oh, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that before, but then I kind of just went on because I was doing another theme last week. But then this week, that Bible verse came back to my mind again, and I thought, there's something interesting here with this. I didn't really quite catch that before, but it's interesting. So I thought I would read that. But first, I'm going to read you a Bible story before I get to that verse that caught my eye. And this is a story of a widow that God was caring for. And it's in 1 Kings 16:29 through 17. Let's try that again. 1 Kings 16 through 29, 16 and 29, 16 verse 29 through chapter 17, 1 through 16. Okay, so it's 16 and 17 chapters. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, became king over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. Now Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord, more than all who were before him. You may even have heard about King Ahab in the Bible. He was very, very, very evil. And Elijah, who as we know is a prophet, and Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead, said to Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, except at my word. So he was so evil, and he was bringing such evil into the Israelite nation, that God sent Elijah to him and said, there's going to be no rain until I say so. And they were trying to get him to turn from evil and trying to get the nation to turn. So he said no rain. Well, there's drought. Okay, so if there's drought, there's going to be famine, because that's the only food they had is the food that they grew. So after he said this, it says, then the word of the Lord came to him, Elijah, saying, get away from here and turn eastward to hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. So God knew that Elijah would not be safe there with King Ahab. So he told him, get away now. And he told him to get away. And it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. How cool would that be? That you could go out in the woods, drink water from a brook, and birds are going to bring you food. That really would be kind of neat, wouldn't it? Pretty amazing. Because, those birds are probably hungry. Because the famine would have affected the birds too, because what did they eat? If it didn't rain, nothing was growing, the birds were probably hungry too. But God had them bring him food. So that went on for some while. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and stayed by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning. Man, he could make a sandwich. Bread and meat. I mean, he had a meal. And bread and meat in the evening. And he drank from the brook. So he had what he needed. It doesn't make you wonder where they get the bread. There probably were people around with bread and meat, and the ravens were stealing it. And the people probably thought the birds were eating it. And the birds were not eating it. They were taking it to Elijah. But it's interesting to me that this means that God would have taken care of those birds too. He would have been feeding those birds, because they would have had to have been fed as well to be able to do this. And it happened after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. Well, it makes perfect sense, right? After a while, there was no more brook. Well, God knew that was going to happen. So he had him sustained there until there was no more water in that area. Then he says, then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. I find this really interesting. That sometimes, I've heard this story, and heard this story, but I don't always hear these little things about it that pop into my head when I read this. I've never heard this commented on. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. God had already spoken to this woman. Nobody ever mentions that. God had been speaking to this woman and had said, I'm sending you a prophet to provide for him. This woman was in a famine. She was a widow. She had no husband. Therefore, she probably had no money. But even if she had money, she couldn't buy food. There was no food to buy. So she would have most likely been extremely poor, at least poor in food. And God was speaking to her, though. And to me, this is very significant, that he spoke to her, not just that he spoke to her, but that she heard him. So he arose, Elijah, and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, indeed a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, please bring me a little water in a cup that I may drink. And as she was going to get it, okay, so you see, she was obeying. He said, God had commanded her, I'm sending you a prophet and you're going to provide for him. And he shows up and he said, go get me some water. Well, there was not much water for them to get. But she didn't hesitate. He said, bring me some water in a cup. And as she was going to get it, so she just said, I'm going to go get it. She was obeying what God had told her to do. But as she was going to get it, he called to her and said, please bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. So she said, as the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread. Okay, so it isn't that she didn't want to provide for him. He said, bring me some bread. And she said, God, I'm sure she's thinking, God, I know you told me to provide for this guy. I don't have any bread. I can't bring you bread. I have no bread. But she says, I have only a handful of flour in a bin and a little oil in a jar. And see, I am gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself. So she was going to build a little fire. I'm going to prepare it for myself and my son that we may eat it and die. So what she was saying, I only have some flour and some oil. Now, if you just think of your pantry, if you just had flour and oil, that's all you had left to eat. You were going to cook it. You would get probably like a tasteless cracker. But you're starving because there's a famine. And what she was doing, that was the last of her food. I find it interesting that she didn't give up while she still had some food. She didn't say, there's not enough for us here, so let's go ahead and die now. This is not going to last. This is not going to last. Let's don't worry about it. She had, before Elijah showed up, she was planning to cook the very last of her food. And saying, after I cook this, then I guess we're just going to die. So what she was doing, to me, it seems like she was trusting God to the last second. Even though you still have to trust him when you die. But what I'm saying is she was trusting that she would live. And she and her son would live. And she and her son would be provided for until they died. And so she is saying, we're going to go ahead and eat what we have left, but then there's no more, and so I guess we're going to die. So to me it was like she was saying, we're going to go to God, so we will. But she was it's like, to me, she was giving God all the time. She was waiting for God to provide for her, I think. But even if he didn't, she was going to continue eking out this food as long as she could, and then if there was no more, okay, then we're going to just die and we're going to go to God. And this is what she was getting ready to do. God, I'm at the end. I'm at the end of what you have provided. There's no more. I can get no more. And so I'm going to go ahead and get some sticks now and build a little fire. And I'm going to cook this flour and this oil. And then my son and I, when we die of starvation, we will just be with you. And Elijah said to her, do not fear. Go and do as you have said, but make me a small cake from it first and bring it to me. And afterward, make some for yourself and your son. So he said, go ahead and do what you said you're going to do. Get your flour, get your oil, what you have left, and make your little, he said, he called it a cake. So it would have been like a dry cracker. What else could it have been? Flour and oil. That's going to make paste. And then you're going to kind of cook it, and it would have tasted like a saltless cracker, I imagine, but not with any leaven in it. It would have been really dry, but they were starving. So he said, go ahead and do it, but bring me a little cake first. And then, now see, what this was happening here is, remember, God had said to him, I've commanded a widow to provide for you. So first he asked for bread. She said, I don't have bread. It wasn't that she's saying, I'm not going to bring you the bread. She's saying, I don't have any bread. I'm going to bring you the water, but all I have is some flour and oil. And my son and I are about to eat it and die. And he said, but first bring me some. So God, she thought back in her mind and said, God told me to provide for this man. God spoke to her. He had been speaking to her. To me, that is so significant in this story, that this woman had a relationship with God. She was praying. She was speaking to God, but she wasn't just praying. I imagine everybody in Israel was praying. God, we're starving, give us food. God, we're starving. But to me, the significance of this woman is she was listening as well. She heard God when he said, I am sending you a prophet and I want you to provide for him. I'm sure she looked at her supplies and thought, are you kidding me? What can I provide for him? She probably thought, okay. But she didn't say, God, no, I have nothing. She apparently said yes. God, okay, you send him and I'll give him what we've got. She might not have known what he wanted. Maybe he wants a room. Maybe he wants, well, he came and first showed up and said, I want water. She, okay, there he is. He wants water. Okay, I'll go get you some water. And then he said, bring me some bread. And she turned around, well, I don't have bread. And then he said, and she said, this is all I have. And he said, okay, bring me a portion of that before you and your son eat the end of it and die. Bring me a portion of it, and then you and your son can eat the rest. See, she didn't say, oh no, that's all we have. God had said to her, I want you to provide for this man. And so she said, okay, I'm going to provide for him. And he said, when he said to her, bring me a portion first and then eat the rest, you and your son. He said, for thus says the Lord God of Israel, the bin of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil run dry until the day of the Lord sends rain on the earth. So he gave her a prophecy. He said, the Lord tells me that if you will do this for me, as the Lord has commanded you. So see, she knew God wanted her to do this. She wasn't just listening to this man, who she may not have known of or have heard of. I don't know if some people may have heard of Elijah or not, but he didn't say, hello, I'm Elijah. He's just said, bring me a cup of water. And she thought this must be the man God sent, because probably nobody else showed up there. Why would people travel there? There was nothing to eat or drink there. So when a strange man showed up and said, give me water, she probably thought, okay, this is him. And he said, the bin of flour shall not be used up, and the jar of oil shall not run dry till the Lord sends rain on the earth. She had to trust that he was correct. Okay, God, you've told me to provide for him. And you know I have like almost nothing. She had almost nothing left. Almost. And she said, she had to see what she had to do here is take a step of faith. She had to take a step of faith to do what God told her. Now, she did not just see a man and say, I'm just going to give this man everything I have. I'm just going to give this man everything. No, first she heard God tell her, I want you to provide for a man I'm going to send you. So she knew he was coming. She knew he was coming because she had a relationship with God. She was speaking to God and she was listening to God. And when he came and she said, this must be him, she still had to take a step of faith and say, I'm going to do what God's commanded me to do. So she went away and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and he and her household ate for many days. Now, we don't know at what point in this famine this was, how far into it was, but it says many days. So they ate and they ate and they ate. Now, I'm telling you, they didn't have the best meal, did they? They had flour and oil every day, but they didn't die. And they didn't, they survived. They had oil and flour, and they must have had some water there because, remember, she was going to get him water, and she didn't say, I'm sorry, I don't have any water. So there must have been some water here, even though there was not rain, but there were probably a well there that still must have had water, or they would have all died. So there had to have been water. But she and her household, now we know she had a son. This says she had a son. We don't know how old the son was. I'm guessing he would have been not an adult son, because if he had been an adult son, most likely he would have been married and taking care of his mother rather than his mother taking care of him. So, and he's most likely not an infant, because she said, I'm going to cook this for me and my son. So, well, she would have been nursing him if he was a baby. So obviously he was old enough to eat and young enough to be at home. So we don't know how old he was, maybe a teenager or preteen or something, we don't know. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking he was an underage son that could not yet take care of his mother because she was taking care of him. And so she was going to cook for them. And so she did what Elijah told her. And the bin of flour, now we've probably heard this story in Sunday school, because I heard it in Sunday school, and I think it's one often taught in Sunday school, how God provided. But it's just, to me, so vital that this woman had a relationship with God, I think was key to her provision. I think it was key. And this is why I think it was key, because this is in this passage I'm going to read is where this verse that caught my eye was. And it's Luke 4:16 through 27. So now we're in the New Testament, and Jesus is what this is. This is talking about Jesus. And it says, so he came to Nazareth. Can't say it. So he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. Jesus did. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. So this was his custom. So it says he did this. You know, Jesus didn't miss church. It says it was his custom. On the Sabbath day, he was in synagogue. So basically, on the Lord's day, he was in church. And it says he stood up to read. So apparently they allowed people to read. He stood up to read, and he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. So it's amazing to me because we know a lot of people, and a lot of people, they had this interesting relationship with Jesus, those that were in the synagogue. They were amazed by him. He was profound to them. They were like in awe of what he did, but yet they resented him. And they somewhat hated him. And at times they loved him. At times, you know how that was. You know, crucify him, Hosanna, crucify him. The same people said Hosanna, then said crucify him. But in the synagogue, sometimes they, like when he was 12 and he went to the temple, and they said they were in awe listening to him. And sometimes he would say stuff in the synagogue, and you know, it must have been something like, oh, here he comes again. What's he going to say today? What's he going to do today? Here comes that guy again. Here he comes again. Because he was different than them. And so they handed him the book. They must have, you know, if they didn't really want to hear what he said, wouldn't they have said, I'm sorry, you're not reading. We're not giving you the book. But they gave him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Then he closed the book, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. Now there's the thing they say nowadays, if you haven't heard it unless you're kind of young, called mic drop, meaning you say something profound and you take the mic like that's it, no more to say, and you drop the mic. Okay, if you haven't heard it, that's what that means. That was a mic drop moment. What he was doing is he was speaking, reading this, and it was about him. It was about him. Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's anointing me to preach. He sent me to the poor. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty, all that, recovery of sight to the blind, set at liberty. He was talking about himself, and then he closed the book and sat down, because it was like, that was it. There it was. And it says, and the eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him. So this is what I'm talking about. I think he was a little bit of a sensation to them. It was a little bit of a, you know, the eyes were on him. Every eye in the synagogue was fixed on him. And he began to say to them, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. Basically what he was saying, I just read that, and it's me. That scripture, it's talking about me. So all bore witness to him and marveled at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. Okay, so they all saw it, but they marveled. They were like in awe. And it says, and they said, is this not Joseph's son? Okay, so what they were saying there is, we grew up with this kid. Isn't he like a nobody like the rest of us? Why is this? Why is he telling us that all of this stuff talking about the Messiah? Why is he like saying that this is fulfilled right now? I'm fulfilling it. Like, who is this? Is just the son of a carpenter that is in our town. It's Joseph's son. He's a nobody. So that's kind of what they're saying. You know, how's this a profound stuff coming out of him? He's just a local that we grew up with. And then he said to them, you will surely say this proverb to me, physician, heal yourself. They said that to them on the cross. And see, what he's telling them, one day you're going to say that to me. Whatever we have done, whatever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in your country. So he says that what you're going to say to me is, we've heard about things being done in Capernaum, so why aren't you doing it here? We've heard about things you're doing. We heard about healing. We heard about this and that. Do it here. See, they didn't really believe him because they hadn't been seeing it there. But he continues, but I tell you, now this is the thing that caught. Oh, then he, no, I'm ahead. Then he said, assuredly I say to you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. Now you may have heard that verse before. No prophet is accepted. That's why he wasn't doing things for them there. That's why he wasn't doing miracles. That's why there weren't healings. Because they were saying, isn't this just Joseph's son? Isn't this just the kid that grew up down the street from us? Isn't just the kid, barefooted kid that used to run around helping his dad build tables or something? And he's acting like he's somebody. So they really didn't believe he could do these miracles. They heard of them, but they just thought he was nothing. They thought he was nobody. And that's what he's saying. Assuredly, no prophet is accepted in his own country. This is the verse that caught my attention. But I tell you truly, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, and there was a great famine throughout all the land. But to none of them was Elijah sent, except to Zarephath in the region of Sidon, to a woman who was a widow. And I read that and thought, oh, many widows were in Israel. Many were hungry. Many were starving. Many needed help. But God only sent Elijah to that one woman. And she was the only one that got help. Why was that? Why was that? It's because of what he said earlier. I say to you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. That was Israel. It was Elijah's country. And I think Elijah, where he was sending Elijah there, probably because there was water there. And there was somebody who agreed to accept what God was telling them and take care of him. God provided for that one woman, and that one woman only, because she was the only one who listened to him and accepted his command to take care of the prophet I am sending you. When he told Elijah, I've commanded a woman to provide for you, she's probably the only one who said, yes, Lord, I will do it. She didn't say, isn't this just one of our fellow Israelites? Who is this guy? Who is this guy that God's telling me to feed him? He's a nobody like anybody else, right? I believe that had the other widows and the other people, as really what God was punishing was King Ahab. But all of the people of Israel were suffering. But if they had accepted Elijah and had they listened to God like this woman was, he'd have provided for all of them. Because, it says that Elijah, when it was talking about this woman, after she made and did what Elijah told her, it says she went and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and he and her household ate for many days. He stayed there. He could have provided for her, gone to another widow, had God spoken a prophecy over her, provided for her, gone to another one. It says in here there were many widows. It says many days. He was there many days. We don't know how many it was. Weeks, months? I'm guessing weeks or months. It says many days. God could have sent him to every widow. And you say, well, what, did God not care about them? Oh, yeah, he did. Oh, yes, he cared about them. But they weren't able to receive because they weren't accepting the prophet in their own land, or they were not close to God. They were not listening to God. Maybe they didn't have the relationship with God that this woman had, where God could even speak to her and say, I'm sending you a countryman that's going to look just like everybody else, but he's my prophet and I want you to provide for him. And she had a close enough relationship to God to say, yes, Lord, I will take a fellow countryman. I will take somebody that looks just like me, that looks like a nobody like anybody else, and I will receive him and do it because you have spoken and said that to me. And she did it. And because she did it, she was provided for. All right, let me finish with this here. And it continues on to say, and many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elisha the prophet. That's the one that came after Elijah. And none of them was cleansed except Naaman the Syrian. And you've probably heard the story of Naaman. It says there were a lot of lepers, but God only healed one through Elisha. Why did he only heal the one? The others maybe weren't believing because it was Elisha. They knew him. But yet, when this person that was healed, Naaman, It's interesting to me, God chose Naaman to be healed. He was an official. He was probably known by everybody, and he's probably known to be a leper. And when he was healed, I'll bet you everybody heard about it. Everybody heard about it. Naaman's been healed. Naaman's been healed. And didn't all those lepers say, I'm going to go get healed too? No. They did not. They could have all gone to Elisha's door, knocked on the door, and said, I'd like to be healed too. Can I go dip in the Jordan too? They could have, but apparently they did not, because they were not in a close enough relationship with God and couldn't believe that God could send one of their own that was just like, this is somebody we've known since they were a kid. This is somebody we grew up with. This is somebody we've known them. This is like, this is not some special person. It's just one of us. And because they just didn't respect that God could have chosen that person, they didn't receive. And what I am wanting to say in all of this is, I want to be the person that receives. I don't want to be the person that God does not come to because I am not trusting him, not believing him, not obeying him, not receiving him. I don't want to be one of the widows God, it isn't that he didn't want to provide for them. It's that he couldn't provide for them because their provision was Elijah. And he showed up to that woman, spoke the word of the Lord, and her flour and her oil did not run out. And he could have gone to every one of those other widows, but they would not have received him. And they would not have received that as of being from God. So that was God's provision. And since they weren't going to receive it, they didn't get it. Did they all starve and die? I don't know. They could have. They definitely would have suffered. It said many days. They could have all been out of food too. I don't really know. But I do know that had they been trusting God and believing and saying, God, whatever you've said, even though it sounds a little wacky to me, it sounds, I don't know about that, God. Sounds odd, sounds different, sounds unusual, sounds like something I wouldn't expect, but God, I'm going to do it anyway. They might have said, God, this sounds unusual, odd, and something I don't expect to me, and I'm not doing that. They didn't trust him, and so they didn't receive. And this woman, I'm going to read after I sing, she received a whole lot more. But first, I'm going to sing a couple songs for you about God taking care of us, and that we need to have a close relationship with him, that we will do what he says and can listen to him, and we can be the ones that have positioned ourselves to receive when the blessings are coming. And he sends, he doesn't necessarily send a person, but he will send the blessings that we can be in the position that, God, I want to be so close to you and so in obedience to you and so in a relationship with you that I'm not only praying to you, that I can hear what you're saying to me. So often I think we just pray to God and let him hear us, and he does hear us. But God, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me, and then we don't ever hear him. And he may be telling you to do something, if you could hear it, and that may bring you some blessings that you need that you're not hearing because you're not maybe open to hearing, or maybe you don't even realize it. But you don't want to miss something. You don't want to miss something that could be a pouring out of a blessing to you. Be not dismayed, whate'er betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide, God will take care of you. Through days of toil, when heart doth fail, God will take care of you. When dangers fierce your path assail, God will take care of you. All you may need, he will provide. God will take care of you. Nothing you ask will be denied. God will take care of you. No matter what may be the test, God will take care of you. Lean weary one upon his breast, God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day or all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. God will take Jesus is all the world to me, my life, my joy, my all. He is my strength from day to day. Without him I would fall. When I am sad, to him I go. No other one can cheer me so. When I am sad, he makes me glad. He's my friend. Jesus is all the world to me, my friend in trial sore. I go to him for blessings, and he gives them over and o'er. He sends the sunshine and the rain. He sends the harvest's golden grain. Sunshine and rain, harvest and grain. He's my friend. Jesus is all the world to me, and true to him I'll be. Oh, how could I this friend deny, when he's been so true to me? Following him, I know I'm right. He watches o'er me day and night. Following him by day and night. He's my friend. Jesus is all the world to me. I want no better friend. I trust him now, I'll trust him when life's fleeting days shall end. Beautiful life with such a friend, beautiful life that has no end. Eternal life, eternal joy. He's my friend. You tell I have a little trouble following both the notes and the words. That song, it's a beautiful song. I guess I didn't really know it all that well, but isn't it pretty? Don't you love that part? Beautiful life that has no end. Beautiful life that has no end. Eternal life, eternal joy. He's my friend. That's the kind of relationship you need to have with Jesus. That he's your friend. He's not just someone that you just go to him when you want something. He's your friend. Okay, I'm going to read now the rest of this 1 Kings 17 through 24. This is just beyond what I read to you before about the woman in Zarephath. This is talking about that same widow, the same widow with the flour and the oil that God was providing while this famine was going on. And it says, now it happened after these things that the son of the woman who owned the house became sick, and his sickness was so serious that there was no breath in him. So she said to Elijah, what have I to do with you, O man of God? Have you come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to kill my son? I think this woman, when her son died, she felt like this is my fault because I've sinned somewhere in my past. And she said, O man of God, you have come to me, and because you are a righteous man of God, you have brought judgment to me. You have brought up my sin, and because of the remembrance of this sin, it's made my son die. Now, I don't think that's why her son died, but she thought so. And that's what she was feeling. And maybe I would feel that way too if that had happened to me. But she is saying to him, would you come to me with your righteousness and bring up my sin, and now my son's going to die? And he said to her, give me your son. So he took him out of her arms. So this is how we know he must have been somewhat small. She was carrying him. He was in her arms. He took him out of her arms and carried him to the upper room. So he was carryable age. He carried him to the upper room where he was staying and laid him on his own bed. Then he cried out to the Lord and said, O Lord my God, have you also brought tragedy on the widow with whom I lodged by killing her son? So he's saying, God, you are letting this woman provide for me. And Lord, are you going to let her son die when she is working for you and she is serving you, and she's the only one that listened to you and did what you said? Oh Lord, are you going to allow her son to die? And he stretched himself out on the child 3 times and cried out to the Lord and said, I like it that he kept doing it. He didn't pray one time and say, oh well. He kept doing it. He kept doing it. He stretched himself out on the child 3 times and he cried out to the Lord and said, oh Lord my God, I pray, let this child's soul come back to him. Then the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came back to him, and he revived. So he answered his prayer. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, see, your son lives. Then the woman said to Elijah, now by this I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is the truth. If she ever had any doubt that God had spoken to her, or ever had any doubt that was this actually the man, is this really the man that's of God, she did not doubt it now, because her son who had died was now alive. And I think it's more significant than unless you know this, it's more significant than just she was going to grieve over her son dying. Of course she would have. That would have been the worst thing. She would have grieved over her son dying. But in this era and in the countries that they lived, women were not allowed to own things generally. There were a few exceptions you find in the Bible, but generally women did not own things. If you think of Naomi and Ruth, when her husband died and the 2 sons died, Ruth's husband and Naomi's husband, and Ruth and Naomi came back, it says they were staying in a house, but it said there was property that had been owned by the family, but they couldn't have it because the property would always go to the next male relative. And that's why when she married Boaz, who was a male relative, she not only got to have a child, Ruth did, she and had a husband now could provide for her. She could inherit her husband's property for this child. So really the women kind of were only allowed to hold property for their sons. So if her son had died, most likely this woman would have lost her home. She would have been homeless and had no one to take care of her, because the property really only followed through the male line. So she had this home because she had a son. And her husband had died, but she had a son. Even though he was young, he was going to, and this was his property technically, but because she was his caretaker, it was her property and his. But without him, she would have probably had nothing. She would have been homeless, and whoever the next male relative was in the line would have inherited that property and that house, and may not have wanted her to live there, because sometimes they weren't gracious to their family members. Sometimes they said, I have enough people to take care of, and I really don't have any responsibility to you, and this is my property now. So without a son, she would have been an incredibly grieving woman, already grieving over her husband, and then she probably would have been homeless. So God not only restored the life of her son, he maintained this woman's home and property, that she got to stay there, and probably forever, because her son would have most likely grown up, got married, and taken care of his mother. 2 Chronicles 16:9 says, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. I think that's how he found this woman. The woman, the widow of Zarephath, who took care of Elijah. It says the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the earth. He is searching. He's looking. He's hunting. He wants to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. The thing is, he can't always find a heart who's loyal to him. Is he showing himself strong on your behalf? If your heart is loyal to him, he will. Now, even if you say, wait, I have been loyal to him, my heart is loyal to him, but he's not showing himself strong on my behalf, well, give him some time, he will. You think about this widow, she was near starvation, she and her son. Her heart obviously was loyal to God, like this says. She was down to her last bit of flour and oil. She was near starvation. But yet, God still showed himself strong on her behalf. So just because you're going through something and you think God's not showing up, oh, he will. He will. He did for this widow. But do examine your heart. Is my heart loyal to God? Am I being loyal? If you are, you're just going to have to wait and keep trusting God. I still believe you're coming. If not, you need to change your heart and give it to God. Give everything over to him and become loyal. And you can open yourself up to be like the receiving widow. He will show himself strong on your behalf. Because think about this woman. If God had not done this, and she had not been this person who was loyal to God and would have done what God told her to do, when obviously the other widows around her would not have, because that's basically what Jesus said. There were many widows. God didn't go to them because they wouldn't have accepted it. He went to her because she did accept it. She not only got food and provision for the rest of that famine until it could go back to being normal. She not only got that, she got her son raised from the dead. Now, of course, they would have both died without the food. They would have both died anyway. But she got her son raised from the dead. That's pretty miraculous. That's pretty amazing. She would have missed that. And she said, I now know that you're a man of God and the word of the Lord is the truth in your mouth. That could have been significant later because, Elijah did a lot of things. And that woman could have spread, we don't know because the Bible doesn't say, but she could have spread word to everyone else. That man that is speaking right now, that's a man of God. He raised my son from the dead. That's a man of God. She could have spread the word and caused him to be listened to. It could have made changes that we don't know about. But God is looking to and fro throughout the earth for those whose heart is loyal to him so he can be strong on their behalf. Isaiah, this is really kind of like the chapter of my life in the Bible. This is one of my favorite chapters, and it is one of the most uplifting. And so if you are in need, or if you are waiting for God to provide something, or if you are just needing him to do something in your life, I pray that you will find this uplifting and comforting to you. It is Isaiah 54, and I'm reading verses 1 through 6, 10 through 15, and 17. So this is most of it. Isaiah 54. Sing, O barren, you who have not borne. Break forth into singing and cry aloud, you who have not labored with child, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married woman, says the Lord. Enlarge the place of your tent, and let them stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Do not spare. Lengthen your cords, and strengthen your stakes, for you shall expand to the right and to the left, and your descendants will inherit the nations and make the desolate cities inhabited. Do not fear, for you will not be ashamed, neither be disgraced, for you will not be put to shame, for you will forget the shame of your youth and will not remember the reproach of your widowhood anymore, for your Maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name, and your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. He is called the God of the whole earth. For the Lord has called you like a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, like a youthful wife when you were refused, says your God. For the mountains shall depart and the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from you, nor shall my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord, who has mercy on you. O you afflicted one, tossed with tempest and not comforted, behold, I will lay your stones with colorful gems and lay your foundations with sapphires. I will make your pinnacles of rubies, your gates of crystal, and all your walls of precious stones, and all your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. In righteousness you shall be established. You shall be far from oppression, for you shall not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near you. Indeed, they shall surely assemble, but not because of me. Whoever assembles against you shall fall for your sake. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me, says the Lord. To me, this is one of the most powerful chapters in Isaiah and probably in the Bible. If you, now I'm not a widow, but I am telling you, I feel just like a widow. I feel just like one. My husband abandoned me. It feels just like he died. It really feels like the same thing. I'm really kind of in the same condition as if he had. If you are a widow, or you have been left by your husband, or you had to leave him, or you are alone, or you are in any kind of lack, or any kind of, I don't mean just lack of goods, but lack of goods also, but I mean lack of relationship. If you're missing anyone, if you're missing anything that's now gone from your life, I like where this says, I will not remember, you will not remember the reproach of your widowhood anymore, for your maker is your husband. I love that when you don't have a husband, God is your husband. Or if you don't have a wife, God is your spouse. I'm not going to say God's a woman, because he's not. But what is missing, God is for you. And I especially like that it says, for your maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name, and your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. He's called the God of the whole earth. That is who will stand in place of your husband. I like all of this at the end. If you are going through any of this, if you're going through oppression, fear, terror, if weapons have been formed against you, if people have assembled against you, if there are tongues that have arisen against you in judgment, all of these things, it says, if there are tongues that have risen against you in judgment, you are going to condemn them. I find it interesting that God doesn't say he's going to condemn them here. Not in this scenario. In this time, God will eventually condemn them at the end. But in this time and in your life, I believe, if there are people who have risen against you in judgment, it says you are going to condemn them. You're going to condemn them because you have the power of God and his righteousness behind you. And it says you're not going to fear, because the terror isn't going to come near you. And it says, indeed, they shall surely assemble. Who's surely assembling? The enemies. The enemies of God are the enemies of your soul. It says they are going to assemble, but it's not because I'm sending them. God didn't send them. If you're having this, God didn't send it to you. It says whoever assembles against you will fall for your sake. I love it that God is not saying they're going to fall for my sake. He says they're going to fall for your sake. Whoever is assembled against you shall fall for your sake. Whoever rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn. This is if you are in righteousness. And this is a heritage of the servants of the Lord. That's your heritage. That means you've inherited that. It isn't something you have to go buy, isn't something you have to go find, and something you have to go get. You inherited it. If you inherit something, you just wake up one day and poof, there it is in your hand because somebody gave it to you. You inherited it. This is what you have inherited that God has said you will be and you will do. And it says, your righteousness is from God. Your righteousness is from me, says the Lord. Strive this week to have a closer relationship with God, a closer relationship with Jesus, so that you are on the receiving end, that you are not missing something he may be saying to you, that you're not missing, if he's saying, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, we don't know what it may be. It may seem like something simple or insignificant, but you don't know what door of blessing or a provision that may be in that for you. Elijah probably had nothing. He had been living like camped out beside a brook for probably months, eating bread and meat brought by birds and drinking water. He had probably the clothes on his back. He had nothing. So when he showed up, he probably didn't look so great. Can you imagine? He probably was dusty, and because there was a famine, it was probably so dusty and so dirty. He probably looked scroungy. He probably was covered with dust and dirt, and he showed up and said, give me some water, and God said, I'm sending somebody to you, and he probably looked like a bum. Seriously, probably did. And he showed up. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and hunt for you a bum, because this is not what this woman did. God spoke to her first and said, I'm sending somebody to you. She was expecting somebody. She had heard from God. She was waiting for him to show up. She didn't just go find somebody to try to make it happen. She just listened to God, and God said, somebody's coming your way. And she was waiting. She was waiting. I heard a story one time, and I can't remember who it's about now, but I read it, and it was really interesting about someone They were Christians. He was a Christian, and he was visiting someone, I believe, visiting family, I think. And he had a truck, and he was in the back of his truck, and it's, someone with the drop down. And he was getting something out of his truck or whatever. And he was pulling something out, I think, of the back of the truck, and he was walking backward, and he walked too far, and he didn't realize where he was, and he stepped right off the back of the truck, and he landed hard on the ground, and it knocked him out. He said it knocked him out. And when he came to, he said it was just a few seconds, though. It just like he blacked out for a second, and he woke up, and he came to. He said there was a woman. Didn't know who this woman was. It was a woman standing over him, praying in the Spirit. Praying over him in the Spirit. And he said he did eventually go, to the doctor and be checked and everything. And I think he had sprained an ankle or knee, or he was just mildly hurt. But he said it could have been severely hurt. But what he found out when he went to the doctor visit, came back to the place and said, who was that woman? He's asking the people that were his family members that lived there, who was that woman? I need to find that woman who came pray to me. And they said, oh, that was a neighbor lady. And so they went and they found this woman. She was an older woman. They found her and said he wanted to know, because he said, he just like closed his eyes for a minute and opened his eyes. And that woman was right there. And he said, he went and spoke to that woman and said, how was it that you were instantly there when I fell? And this woman was a praying woman. And she said, every day I pray. Every day I pray to God. Every day I stand in my kitchen, or I stand at the window, or I stand in my home, and I'm praying. And she says, every day I pray, and every day I'm communing with God and talking to God. And she said, this day I was standing in my house and I was praying, and she said, God spoke to me very strongly and said, go outside your home and stand out there on the sidewalk, because somebody's about to need you. And she said, I didn't know who, I didn't know where, I didn't know what. And so she said, I said, okay, God. So she said, I went outside and stood on the sidewalk and was praying, God, okay, here I am. I'm standing outside on the sidewalk. And so she prayed, and she turned just in time to see that man step off the back of his truck and hit the ground hard. So she was there like that. And when she was there, she had already been praying. She had already been praying. So she was already in the prayer spirit. And when she saw him fall, because God had spoken to her and said, someone's going to need you in a minute. He did not, it's interesting to me, he didn't just keep that man from falling, but he provided someone to pray for him when he did. Sometimes he might keep somebody from falling, but if that isn't what happens, he can have another provision for you. But if that woman had not been listening to God, he could have been a lot more seriously hurt. He could have had a serious head injury. He could have broken bones all over the place. We don't know, but he was not as badly hurt as he probably would have been, because that woman had listened to God and was in position where God told her to go. He didn't even tell her why. He just said, go stand outside because somebody's about to need you. And she didn't even know need what. What somebody going to need? She was an elderly woman. She said, I don't know what they're going to need, but she heard the voice of God. She went outside, and when she saw him fall, she was there. Because everybody else, I think, was in the house. Everybody, his family members, he was outside alone doing something in the truck. I don't even know if they would have even seen him or found him for a while. She was there, and she was the only one that was there because God had spoken to her and told her, go stand outside. And when he fell, she was there, and when he opened his eyes, she was already praying for him. She was already praying that God would deliver him and heal him and protect him, and he wasn't terribly injured. I think that's what it would be so fantastic to be that, wouldn't it? To be that woman or man, but to be the person that you are praying and listening to God, and God can just speak something to you like, go stand outside because somebody is about to need you. And you go stand out there, and you can be the person that God can use. And then because he's going to use you to do something, he will then return and provide for you because you are working for him. And I pray that we all become that person, that we all become the people who say, God, speak to me. I strive to do this, but to be honest with you, I forget it most of the time. I want to be the person that prays on my way to work every day. God, use me to bless somebody today. Use me to touch somebody here today. Most of the time I'm going to work saying, God, I wish I didn't have to work. God, I wish I could be a homemaker like I always wanted to be my whole life. God, was that ever going to happen to me? God, I really don't want to go here. I really don't want to be here. I want to be home. I want to be a housewife like was my dream since I was a little child. That's what I'm usually praying. And God knows that's my desire, and he knows that's my prayer. But since I am where I am right now, I should be praying, God, speak to me for somebody there where I'm at today. Speak to me if there's somebody who needs me to be there for something. And God has used me, I know, to touch people there. But I want it to be more. If I have to be there, God, use me to be a blessing to more people there. And speak to me more. Speak to me more so I can do what's needed where I'm at. And I pray that you will want that in your life as well. And if you are not the person whose heart is loyal to God, you can change that in a second. All you have to do is say, God, forgive me. I give my heart to you. I am loyal to you. Now teach me and speak to me, and I will be a new person now, and I'll be the person you want me to be. And until next week, I pray that you all have a great week, and that God will bless you, that God will speak to you, and that you will hear it, and that he will use you, and in turn, you will receive all the blessings that he has in store for you, like the one and only one widow in Zarephath. You know, it didn't have to be just the one. God didn't really want to just bless one woman. He didn't want just that. He wanted to bless them all. I know he wanted to bless them all, but they were not in position. They had not positioned themselves to receive it. They were not being loyal to God. They were not doing what he would have wanted them to do. They would not have received Elijah, and they weren't receiving God. We don't know that maybe he had gone to them and tried to speak to the other ones and said, would you? And they may not have. It may have only been one that said yes. I want to be the one that says yes. And you be the one that says yes also. Until next week. Good night.